Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Entrepreneur Encounters. In today's interview, it's deeply meaningful because I interview Sheila Long, the founder of MalamaDoe, a co-working space for women. I start out by asking her why entrepreneurship. Let's listen to her answer.
Well, women need a supportive community and they need people to lean on when they have questions, but also they need to know that they're going down the right track as well. So when you're talking to other people who really are like minded, it's helpful to just have kind of like a tribe of support. I've always grown up being surrounded by small business owners. I'm not from like a large area. So pretty much everyone who I grew up around ran their own business or they worked for a small business and just really had to have strong ethics and know how to get the job done right the first time. So for me, that's very important. And also the flexibility of being a small business owner is amazing. And that's important too when you have the role of being a caretaker.
Well, regular listeners to this show know that this is a common theme that shows up with so many entrepreneurs. Flexibility, the need for flexibility. In fact, when Kate and I have done straw polls with other entrepreneurs, yeah, there's a why and there's a backstory. But I mean, what's the compelling piece that you really, really want to have? For so many folks, it comes down to time. We want the ability to have more influence on our time. I used to say control your time. Anyone who's been in business for themselves knows that that's nonsense. But we want to be able to have more influence in our time or have the choice to make the trade-offs that we want to. So I go on to ask a follow-up question people are going to be familiar with. That's great entrepreneurship, but why this particular business? Why this particular model? What's the compelling need out there, the problem that she saw that desperately needed to be solved? Let's hear what she says.
I worked in corporate America. I loved working in corporate America in a big high tech company, Motorola. And unfortunately, I came down with a health condition where it was really not conducive to having multiple children with the health condition. So I was advised that I needed to kind of get off that fast paced track that I was on and kind of slow down and just relax a little bit. So I had to leave corporate America. I actually was laid off the day after my oldest child was born. That was a journey in itself, going from just being surrounded by hundreds of people in a workplace setting and 100 different people in a cafeteria to just being alone in your house with an infant. But then I met a bunch of different women, just different lifestyles and different careers over the next few years. And when my children were old enough to be in school, I was looking to go back into the workforce. But there really weren't a lot of part time opportunities available or flexible opportunities, especially because I had moved from Chicagoland, where there's just a lot more out there, to the Milwaukee area. But I had met awesome women along the way, which is why my book is titled with that name. And I did see that there really was not a big community for business and that we really need to have a supportive community. So it's a longer journey. I just saw the need and wanted to have a place for women to congregate.
Wow, there are a couple of pieces here that really stand out to me. One, the timing of the job change situation. There are a good number of entrepreneurs that have decided that this is the impetus, this is the push that they need to be moved out of corporate. It's some type of job change, realignment, resizing, whatever the corporation wants to say. But ultimately, we find ourselves not in a job anymore. And what are the next steps? That was one of the things that actually got me going on one of the businesses I started. I was between jobs. I was out of one job and sort of going through the severance and deciding what is my next step going to be here? And am I going to go and seek another W-2 job, or am I going to take the opportunity to figure out how to freelance and start my own business? So it happens. I think the other piece that really stands out to me is that feeling of missing communities. Any of us that have had that experience of working in a large corporate environment, interestingly, even when you change from one large employer to another large employer, that peer group, that friend group, it is so difficult when our common tie is our employer and usually the location where we're working. And those are the pieces that tie us together. And then suddenly it feels pretty lonely. It is lonely out there being an entrepreneur is one of the reasons, again, that Entrepreneur Encounters started. If you take a look at the journey of most people, it's also personal. It's not just circumstances that go on, it's personal. It's one of the things that led us in when we started Milwaukee Business Coach. Both my wife, Kate, and I, our personal journey and our professional journeys, we bring all those pieces together. And we believe that God had a plan and a purpose to bring us to this point, to use these skills. So a lot of times it feels like, some people use words like the stars align. It just happened. It was my only opportunity left. It just seemed like the right thing to do. For me, it's following a purpose and a plan that's laid out. But whatever it is for you, I want to say that there are problems that need to be solved. And if that's you and you feel like you're in this right place right now to be able to address it, go ahead and move forward. That could be adding a new product line. It could be hiring some other people so you can focus on something that's absolutely needed to excel. It could be doubling down on what you already do that's great, but you feel like the demand is overflowing or could overflow if you could put more energy into it. I'd love to continue the discussion with you because it's a place that I think holds us back, that we hold ourselves back, quite frankly. And if you reach out to us at mkebusinesscoach.com, I'd love to continue a discussion on that, because if we can break those free, a lot of times that's the path towards growth and more fulfillment than we would have otherwise. All right. Sheila goes on now to talk about customer discovery. How do we actually know that there are women out there who are going to want this service she's about to offer? Let's listen.
I met with different women in coffee shops. Actually, my office was the North Shore Boulangerie in Shorewood. So I went there most weekdays after my kids went to school. And it was great just talking to them, kind of seeing where they were at, how they were looking to grow. I was really looking more to do consulting and looking to partner, but there just weren't as many people here. So I ended up back at my business school in the career center there. I was telling the woman helping me about it, and she's like, "You have an incredible idea. Why don't you launch this idea?" And then I also had been on some networking groups through my university, and I met somebody who recommended I read this book called Disrupt, which is just this great book about how to take your business idea and make sure that it's unique. So I read that book and really fine-tuned my model and determined what women really needed. And that was really like a strong supportive community. And then I researched around the country. I think there was maybe 3, maybe 5 women co-working communities. In Milwaukee, had about 3 or 4 just co-working. They didn't have anything for women. Wisconsin didn't have anything just devoted to women. As I launched the business, we determined who we thought the ideal client wasn't. I thought it would be more like a stay-at-home mom returning to the workplace, but it ended up being more telecommuters, like people working from their home. And then as we evolved, then the members that I had wanted private offices. And I thought it would be this model where everyone would want to talk and communicate, but my market is very task oriented and they just have a lot going on at home. They come to the work, they want to get it done, get their work done, and they want to leave. So we had a weekly meeting where we could talk. It was optional, which is great. And then they wanted an office so they didn't have to reserve conference rooms and they could just meet clients face to face. So our model has evolved from having one conference room. And so now we have 2 conference rooms and we've really grown our square footage because everybody wanted offices, which I didn't anticipate.
Did you hear the journey there as she continued to ask questions, get feedback, and evolve her model? Now, let me be really clear. Our job is to listen during the customer discovery. We're not necessarily going to jump every time someone's like, "Oh, here's the thing I actually think I want." We have to validate, number one, are they going to be willing to pay for it? 2, do they really actually want it, or is it just a nice to have? And then finally, is it something that we're actually interested in doing? There's lots of things that we could do in this world. We're not going to be able to do all of them. But Sheila was able to continue to evolve and meet the needs. She had a vision of how it was going to be one way. Remember, she felt like it was going to be more interactive community, but she's really got a lot of task-focused individuals who what they wanted was a private space, their own office, to be able to get done the work they needed to. And so she shifted, so she evolved, so she met the need. My question for you is, are you out there doing any customer discovery? Are you getting any feedback? Hey, what works? What doesn't work? What did you like? What can we do more of? And what should we maybe do less of or even get rid of? A lot of times we can figure out how to really, really streamline our business if we're like, look, No one's asking for this thing that we keep offering, we keep talking about, we keep trying to sell. No one's buying it. Now, maybe they're not buying it because we're not presenting it in a compelling way. We haven't presented value. We haven't made those things work. Or maybe it's just really not what the market wants and the market is telling us to move somewhere else. Take some time to listen, whether you're just getting started, whether you're in business, whether you've been in business for a long time. Things change. Let's go ahead and go back out and revalidate with that customer discovery. Now we come to the crucible moment, funding. How is Sheila going to get money in order to make this happen? It's a question that hits many businesses at some point. We're going to have to figure out how to get some cash, whether it's its own, whether it's other people's, whether we figure out how to get creative. Let's hear her creative solution.
That's a hard thing, to put your own money into launching a business and deciding what your budget should be, and then working with other people who might have a different idea in mind about what the budget should be. And we did benchmarking. Like, we went to this large co-working community in Chicago. It's called 1871. And the company I worked for, Motorola, they put all of their really innovative, creative people in 1871. So I already had an in. And then my university also has like a whole suite there. So I was able to tour there and got a lot of great insight, which actually saved me a lot of money because I saw how they had it set up. Like, somebody wanted, I got a quote for telephone jacks, thousands of dollars. 1871 was like, there's no wires. Like, first we didn't see any wires, and they're like, everything's on Wi-Fi. So I'm like, yeah, why would we pay thousands of dollars? And then I knew I put some personal money into it. I did have some friends and family money. I was going to take out a loan, but the interest rates were higher. So I was able to take out a loan from a family member. And then also, I just can't say enough about Wivik. What a great organization. It's such a game changer. So they brought in Kiva, which is this 0% interest loan. And so I had to create a video. Another thing that's completely terrifying about launching a video and tell my story, which really, as you know, right, is marketing. So I had to tell my story and get it out there and then get enough people to fund my loan. And so I raised, I think, I can't remember exactly how much that loan was, but I've paid it back. It was a 3-year loan, and it allowed me to get interns to be able to grow the business. And then when I wrote my book, I rewrote it 3 times, which is part of the great book writing class I was in with New Degree Press. But after I wrote it the first time, I had to raise between $5,000 and $8,000 to print it. So that was pretty daunting. And that was not a loan. So I had to really put myself out there. And I raised about, I think it was $5,500 to print the book. But it was through a lot of just talking up the book and a lot of people helping along the way.
Well, I think Sheila touches on just about every type of funding that you can get, maybe with the exception of equity funding, right? She talks about needing to put in her own money. She talks about getting money from friends and family to help out. She looked at getting a conventional loan. She went to WIBIC, which is a CDFI, a community development financing institution, who has access to different funds with different lending criteria, maybe than your standard bank. It may provide some more options. She talked about a Kiva loan, which is basically a crowd-funded loan platform that allows you to get small level loans to be able to build up your business. There are lots of different ways to be able to get access to funding. What I liked here about Sheila's story is that she pursues many of them, and she pursued a lot of different avenues. She didn't take them all, but she knows they're all out there. I run across so many people who have looked at one singular option, and maybe it didn't work out. And I'm here to tell you that there are better and more important alternatives that you can pursue than just the one you're looking at. So broaden your horizon, take a look at all the options, and importantly, talk to other people who've been through this before. And then know your budget, know how much money you actually have to spend or need to spend. And sometimes what we need to do is actually shrink the requirements that we have so that we can start with the money we have access to and then use our business to propel us forward in order to fund the next steps. I'm going to go on to ask Sheila about support. I've heard me say it here before. I say it in the intro. We want to hang out with some entrepreneurs who are just a little bit ahead of us because no one does these things alone. There's no self-made entrepreneurs. We need to hang out with other people. So I want to hear about the support system that Sheila has.
I built a community of support. That's That's why I just love my business and it just continues to pay dividends. We call people who were a member and who left, we call them alumni. So I have a lot of alumni who've come back. And actually, I was just featured in a different publication and they asked for some of our members to also be featured. And it ended up there's 5 of them that are going to be featured. They're all alumni who came back. So that's just really fun. There's a lot of referrals. And I always tell people that we're not really doing a hard sell if somebody comes in for a tour because they might have a neighbor or a family member or somebody they'll meet in 6 or 9 months who needs a supportive community. And it's really just about women helping women. Um, and also the entrepreneurial community in Milwaukee is incredible. And then the women's entrepreneurship community is also a very special place. So I was able to have like-minded people be part of my journey.
One of the most important words I heard Sheila say was she built. She built a community of support. That's an active process. It's not just I had a bunch of people around me and they were all amazing. It's an active, focused, intentional process that we have to go through to build that support that we need in order to be successful. Our support changes over time. One of the things I really enjoyed, even the folks who are in the MalamaDoe community, once they have chosen to leave for whatever reason, they refer to them as alumni. That's continuing the relationship even at another stage as it evolves and grows. I think that is an amazing insight to be able to focus on the relationship building in that way. So whatever it is for you, there are lots of different opportunities out there. I want to tell you to at least find one opportunity. And I say at least one. There are probably going to be several. There's going to be some individuals who are going to be super supporters. In my experience, talking to a lot of different entrepreneurs, there tends to be 1 or 2 super supporters that give outsized amounts of effort and support. You're not even paying them, but they seem to give you more referrals. They seem to give you more time. They give you more suggestions. They'll give you more feedback. Find out who those people are. And the way you do that is not saying, hey, you're going to be a super supporter. You've got to talk to 10, 20, 30, 50 people. And then you'll find out the one that always willing to take your call, the one that's always willing to have a little bit longer conversation than 5 minutes turns into 50 minutes, turns into we should get lunch and talk about that some more. Those are the people I want you to hang on to. All right. Perseverance might be one of the top, in fact, in my mind, is one of the top 2 criteria that entrepreneurs have to have if your small business is going to be successful. So I want to hear how Sheila keeps it going when the going gets rough.
Well, you really have to know your values, right? And what you stand for. And that is really critical. Like for me, I just believe women, we need to be welcoming and we need to really encourage other women along the way. It's, and I know it's hard for men. I'm not opposed to men, but it is a hard path just dealing with different microaggressions that women face. And it can be related to being a caretaker. It can be related to how many hours you're working or how much you're billing or whatever happens. But we need to support each other. And I have daughters and I have nieces and I have nephews and a son. And I really want to make this world a better place for the next generation.
I love this. What Sheila's really focusing on here, what we call at Milwaukee Business Coach, the vision and values of the business. That vision is the thing when it's the dark and stormy night in February and it's cold and you don't want to get out of bed and business is just not going the way you want it to. It's the thing that gets you up and gets you moving. You know, for Sheila, it's making the world a better place for women entrepreneurs and business owners who will come after her. She wants to leave a legacy and she wants to leave the world in a better place than where it started. And she wants to help out a category that she understands deeply and can relate to and connect with and build into. So for those of you who haven't really thought about your vision very much, it's like, this is the job, this is the way to make some money, this is the hustle. That's fine. But in my experience, those don't last. Those are the folks who are in something for 6 months, a year, and suddenly shift. And that is fine if that's how people want to do it. It's difficult to build a sustaining business unless you're anchored back to that why. I don't believe we can stay in that space. We have that be, that's what got me out of bed. Now I got to go get to work. But it's really important that you understand that, because when you're not anchored, it tends to drift. It tends to impact our ability to persevere and make it through those tough times. If you haven't really anchored into what your why is, where your vision and how it plays, again, I want to encourage you to reach out to us at MKE Business Coach and let's have a discussion and see if we can't surface a little more for you of that why. What gets you in this job at this time with your skills in this environment that you're facing right now? I think you find it may reinvigorate you for the business that you're pursuing and that you're building. Well, like you, I can't do this on my own. I'd like to thank Chris Crean for editing all the music for the intro and outro for this podcast. And I'd like to thank my awesome wife, Kate, for doing all the editing work in order to make these episodes come to life. If you like what you've heard on Entrepreneur Encounters, I want to encourage you to please like, subscribe, share, and comment. So again, thank you for joining me on this episode of Entrepreneur Encounters. I'm Brent Halfwasson, Milwaukee Small Business Coach, and I want to invite Chris to take us out.
Ready to take